Whoa, what is going? Oh shoot. Okay, what's going on, everybody? How you guys doing? It is Newbie on this July 3rd. Basically pre to July 4th. It's going to be a great time next tomorrow for you, all you Americans. Actually, that was rude. Good morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you guys are. I really got a good segment today. I got a good friend of mine. She's really knowledgeable, really good with comics. So you guys are in for a treat. Before we go on, I did announce a giveaway today. I'm trying to reach 750 subscribers. So be on the lookout for that. I'm giving away 2 books. Boom. X-Men Annual 14, first cameo appearance of Gambit, and X-Men 282, first appearance cameo of Bishop. So be on the lookout for that. I'll announce the winners as soon as we hit the mark. So definitely excited. So guys, without further ado, my guest today is Jennifer from Comics Will Break Your Heart. What is going on?
Hello, how's it going, Newbie?
It's going good. It's going good. How are things in Portland?
Beautiful. It's actually a little bit of a sunny day out today, so it's not complete. It was cloudy earlier, but it's not going to rain today. So
any plans for July 4th tomorrow?
I'm not like a big July 4th celebrator, but I will. I have the day off, so I do plan on just kind of getting out into the city a little bit, maybe walking around. Yeah.
Sweet, sweet. So guys, this is Jennifer from Comics Will Break Your Heart. She's got a lot of knowledge. She's a dope chick. So we're gonna get into it. So guys, this is Women in Comics. This is part 2. So Jennifer, let's get it going. So what started you off with in comics? Like, how did you get into comics?
So if I had to think of like one moment that got me into comic books, I would say that when I was younger, I didn't read too much. And then the Harry Potter series got me into just reading books and being into sci-fi and fantasy and that realm of things. I remember specifically reading Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman, and then a friend let me know that he actually does comic books. So then I started to read some of his comic books. And then I remember I was in high school when I had my high school photography teacher who had a ton of graphic novels like Fables and Sandman and a couple of Batman books and just like that type of stuff. And I had a couple friends who also knew some comic books. And I would say if there was one book that got me into comic books, it would be The Sandman by Neil Gaiman.
Sandman, yeah, DC, yeah. So that leads me to another question then. DC or Marvel?
So I get this question a lot, and I would probably say, I'm going to go ahead and say both and neither, because DC is what I was reading primarily when I got into comic books, specifically Batman and The Long Halloween. That was one of the first like Batman books that I had read. So I would say DC. Now I feel like I read a lot more Marvel if I was going to go between the two. However, the number one publisher that I read more than anything else is going to be Image Comics.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're actually a big fan of the Saga, right?
Oh, it's for sure. Like if you can see up here, I've got some Saga action figures. I've got some of the Saga pops. I even have a Saga tattoo of Lion Cat. So yes, it is by far my favorite series. I have the entire run of Saga as well. So of the single issues.
I feel not just a lot of women, but I know a lot of women gravitate towards that title, but I know a lot of men do too. So that's pretty cool. Sure. I've only, to be fair, I have only seen and read the first page where basically she's pregnant and like yelling out like this something. I don't know. It's like kind of graphic, and she's like barfing and stuff. So
she is in the midst of giving birth, and she is saying that she is defecating. I won't use the word that she uses, but she's defecating, and that's actually
right. Like that's how you open the book, and you're like, hey, whoa, what's going on?
Yep. And I remember when it first got released in 2012, there was a little bit of a like not a shock value to it, but there's a little bit of controversy because she's actually she's breastfeeding on the cover. So there's a little bit of exposure, but that's womanhood. That's a little bit of motherhood. So
it's 2020. Come on, get over it.
Yeah.
Like I remember growing up and you couldn't say on TV, you couldn't say hell, bitch, or ass, I think. And now it's like pretty much
Yeah.
anything goes but the F word. So I mean,
Yeah.
get over it. So I gotta ask you, this being women in comics, what do you make of the whole Marvel, even DC, I guess, but like just them trying to go that whole female route, you know, giving new characters a little thing. I know there's that iconic scene in Endgame where they kind of have like all the women at one point, and I always laugh because it's always funny to me how they kind of focus on Wasp, and she just kind of looks around and she's just like, and in my head I'm like, okay, you're like human, you have no powers, like you know, what are you really gonna do? But what do you think about that? Like, do you think it's a good, you know, it's a good thing that they're going that women route and things like that?
Oh, for sure. And I think that it's really important to have representation in any type of media that you see, whether that you're a woman and you want to see female characters, whether you're a person of color and you want to see the life that you see around you in comic books.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, you know, not only in my opinion is it important that we see female characters brought to life on the page, whether that translates into movies or TV shows. I also think that it's really important that we have those people behind the scenes and have female creators, whether they're writing and drawing. I think those are some of the best stories. Now, I know that for a little bit, Marvel, I feel like really jumped in there and kind of like turned a lot of their very big characters and put women in those roles, like seeing Jane Foster take Thor's hammer. We saw Laura Kinney become the new Wolverine. We see Riri Williams taking over the mantle of not Iron Man, but Ironheart. So we did see a lot of that for a few years. I think that there was some backlash for people who weren't ready for those stories or didn't understand maybe what was going on with those stories. I loved a lot of them, and I worked at a comic book shop during that time. So I think that it was really cool to see, especially younger women who were the age that I was when I was getting into comic books. I think that it was cool for them to see people who looked like them on a comic book, where I didn't necessarily see that when I was getting into comic books. So that's cool.
Absolutely. And I think it's actually pretty cool. I know a lot of people don't know. I know Jennifer knows, but obviously I'm not a visible minority, but I am Latino. I've always thought it would be cool to have kind of a Latino thing. I hope everybody knows the difference between Latino and Mexican. But yeah, you know, Mexicans, they have like Zorro and things like that. I love the fact that Miles Morales, even though a lot of people don't know, but he is Puerto Rican as well as African American. So I kind of like to see that. I know somebody had messaged me and they're like, oh, well, you know, they're doing Anya Corazon, which means heart in Spanish. She is like the Mexican / Latin Spider-Man character, I guess you could say. Will we ever see that? Who knows, right? I like the fact that what's going on in society right now, you know, people are more welcoming, because I do remember, I think it was when the first Spider-Man had come out, or like Tom Holland, a lot of people were like, well, you know, like we can't have certain black characters and things like that. I remember when James Bond was basically, like, they were talking about, I always butcher his name, but Idris Elba.
Idris Elba.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they were saying like, oh, he'd be the next 007. And like people put the guy on a cross, like they were losing their mind. And I was just like, why? But you know, that's a topic for another story. So listen, you are originally from Florida.
Yeah. Yep. Just moved here to Portland a couple months ago, but I was
you're on the West Coast. Yeah, exactly. East to west. What is the comic scene in Florida compared to the comic scene in Portland?
What I would probably say is that specifically in Portland, I feel like there's a ton of comic book shops just within this like radius. In Florida, where I lived, specifically in South Florida, there was one shop for a very long time that was there since I was in high school, but then it shut down. And then the one that I worked at was about 45 minutes away. So I'd have to drive like 45 minutes away just to get to the comic book store that I worked at. Granted, it was only part-time, so it was a couple times a week. But I would say the convention scene is pretty fun, because where I was at, there's
in Portland, right?
or sorry, in Florida, the convention scene was pretty good because there was SuperCon in Miami, and then you had MegaCon in Orlando, which was like the big one. For a while, I lived in North Florida, and it was about a 5-hour drive to Atlanta. So like that's Dragon Con. So I feel like in Florida, it's such a large state. Like it takes like 5 hours to drive through the whole state. So you really do have a lot of like conventions. Like that's the, I would say one of the biggest things. And then here in Portland, I would say one of the biggest differences that there's a lot more love for indie comics and indie stories, and not even just like Image and Dark Horse, because Image and Dark Horse are both here. The headquarters are here in Portland and Milwaukee. So I feel like there's even small press that's really big here too, that we see in Portland. But I feel like there's a much bigger convention scene in Florida where there's 1 or 2 conventions here. Unfortunately, COVID kind of canceled some of them this year, so I haven't been able to go to those conventions like Rose City Comic Con, and then there's is it Emerald City Comic Con is in Seattle, which is about 3.
I've heard that one.
Yeah, that's about 3 hours away from here. So those are the 2 big ones, but I know in Florida there's just so many more conventions.
And for those people who don't know, actually Jennifer is located in the same area as Bueller. They actually talk. They have a good relationship. So that's pretty dope. All right, I'm just gonna go to the chat real quick because we had a few people. So FaceTime
First,
come on, brother. Keys, he's always getting silver. Lasso, what's going on, brother? You got the bronze. The comic book G Spot, what's going on, brother? Thank you for joining. Bearded Barbarian, what's going on, brother? I just actually met him in the San Diego Comic-Con release of some Funkos. They kind of have this Doctor Doom Iron Man one, so that's pretty good. Oregon, what's going on? Miss Rose City, ECC. Yep. So I want to touch what's going on. There was a comment I saw. Yes, FaceTime. Damn, look at that bookshelf. She has a lot of books. She's got 25 long and short boxes.
This behind me is just like graphic novel collections. I'd have about 20 like-ish short and long boxes.
Yeah, and there's actually a picture on her Instagram, which is Comics Will Break Your Heart. She's got a picture where she is sitting on about 19 or 20 boxes. Those are all hers. That is not Photoshopped by any means. This girl collects. She is big time. And FaceTime. Everybody forgets about her. Low key, that is a key I probably wish a lot of people. I don't wish a lot of people knew because it is an affordable book, but definitely a book I would get. So you touched on, or I think we did privately. We were talking about Riri Williams and things like that.
Yeah.
Being an Iron Man fan, I'm actually kind of disappointed because I don't think. I mean, I know the books are hot. Invincible Iron Man 7 and 9. They are sought after. Like it's got like $120, $150 price tag to each book.
Yeah.
I don't think, and I think I had this conversation with FaceTime today. I don't think that she's necessarily coming as much as they say she is. I think that they could kind of, and a lot of people have heard me say this, but like as long as it's marketable, as long as the character is marketable, then they could do whatever they want with it. And I think at the moment, Suri is marketable. I think X-22 Laura, I think she's super marketable.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have heard me say too, like I just don't believe that they're gonna just keep rebooting characters. At some point we're gonna have to say, you know what? Okay, Wolverine is not here. The next character, his daughter is gonna have to take the, kind of take the role, right? So I think those characters are coming. As much as I can see the storyline for Riri Williams, I really think that one might take a while.
I wouldn't be surprised if some of the characters like Riri Williams, if she doesn't show up in the if she doesn't show up in the movies, I wouldn't be surprised if she got like an animated series, because I know that's happening a little bit with Squirrel Girl and Miss Marvel.
Yes, and that too, right?
Hello.
Like Panda, what's going on, brother? If nobody has visited his page, I know his YouTube doesn't have anything. He's got content coming out. Definitely go check out Panda. One of the nicest guys in this community, especially if you're just starting out. This guy is a really good guy to talk to. Really good guy. Let's see here. FaceTime. Yep, exactly. We were talking about this. Riri's big problem was timing. Not a good time to take over as Iron Man. I totally agree. I think that they kind of, and me being an Iron Man guy, I don't want to like just play that sentence out, but yeah, it's something that I think I was watching TK Batcave and DTC, like their cousins, dudes that talk comics. I think his like handle name is, and they were talking the same thing. We were talking about the Iron Man dying, and he was like, Newbie, I don't want to cry right now. Like, let's not talk about it. It's still kind of like salt in the womb. It's still new. So yeah, I don't see anybody taking over that that mantle right now. So I feel like if you are collecting, if you're new to collecting, I'm not against women in comics, so don't take it this way, but I would probably hold off on purchasing Invincible Iron Man 7 and 9, which is the cameo and the first full appearance, because you're probably going to be able to get it at a cheaper price when it goes down, right? So that's just something a little comic tip. I know I've said that before, and I remember somebody was like, "Oh, are you just saying that because you don't like women in comics?" About like, I think it was like She-Hulk like a few years ago. I was like, no, I'm not against women at all. And now look, years later, She-Hulk is getting her own thing. So, and that's why I kind of wanted to touch like, we're seeing a lot more women in the movies. We're seeing a lot more women with their solo titles. I do wish that as we're kind of getting in society where we are, and like it's more normal to have women and like they could hold their own solo titles. I'm kind of sad to see that Black Widow is not going to be a part of that, right? Like she's going to have her standalone movie, but like moving forward, she's like super badass that, like I would have loved to seen her in the comic or in the movie.
And I think too, the Black Widow movie should have come out 5 years ago. It should have come out, within the last 10 years. Why is it taking after Endgame for her to come out? So I think that one point that I want to make is that how many shitty movies have we seen that has a male, like we talked a little bit about Thor 2 and we talked a little bit about the Hulk and things like that, is that I think that we end up giving a lot of excuses for male-led movies.
Yeah.
But then we have one or two female-led movies and people are like, this is why we can't have women in comics, or this is why we can't have a female solo movie, is because we get one shitty movie. And it's like, I want to see 100 shitty female-led superhero movies, because I think that eventually we'll get
Marvel movies.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of times it's personal. Like some stories will speak to some people that, won't speak to other people. Was Dark Phoenix a great movie? I still went and watched it. I didn't love it at all. I want to say that nicely. I didn't love it. But I think that eventually we're going to get it right. And did we get male-led super movies right the first time? Of course not. Yeah. But we still.
I got a good question here from Chubby Pop Chaser, and thanks for joining us, brother. But wouldn't you rather see women as new characters rather than a rehash of an existing character? I personally, and I'll go first because this is more your show than mine, so I'll just give my 2 cents. But for certain things, I would love to see newer characters. Like I want to see them do kind of what's Ant-Man's sanction or structure. I forget what her thing is. I would love for them to bring her in. I would love for them to do X-23 stuff. Like I at some point, yeah, you do kind of get like, okay, we get it, X-Men. Okay, we get it, this, right? So like, I think it is cool when they bring in new characters. I think if they go that Secret Wars route, we might see more. The other thing that I saw here is, and Panda and I think we've touched on it, but I feel like these characters
Yeah.
will make it one day for sure. Yeah, I think females, just different minorities, African American, Asian, things like that. I think this is going to be a more of a norm, right? Like I just see it. So I definitely see more women in it for sure. So
I, for one, would love to see a lot more, like 100%. I'm there. I want to see a lot of fresh new characters that don't necessarily carry the baggage of some of the older characters, or feel like they have to live. Because I think that's the thing, is that if there is a woman who's in character who's taking over the mantle of a previously male character, she has a lot to live up to, right? So like 100%, I'm there. I want to see more female characters. However, I think that if we think about in terms of what's marketable, I think that seeing women take over the mantles of male characters, that's a little bit more marketable, right? Like people are more likely to buy a character that they kind of know, have some history with.
Mm-hmm. So this is a good question from Evan here. Do you think as of right now DC has a more dominant women's movies and shows rather than Marvel? Well, Batgirl is, that's just its own thing now, especially with Ruby Rose leaving. Wonder Woman, they've really hit on that. Like Wonder Woman, I'm a big believer if you can market it, it's amazing. Like you saw little girls dress up as Wonder Woman. I think the two things that DC has that really worked out for them is Wonder Woman hit with all audiences, and the fact that Harley Quinn hit. But when you start looking into and I haven't seen Birds of Prey. I think a lot of people have heard me say that. I think maybe in the upcoming days I might give it a chance. But just going from the Suicide Squad, I think it's a weak movie. So I hope they do something with the character, because it is a very iconic character, especially coming into this age with like bringing women in. I think it's a character they could really touch on. And I think, Jennifer, we actually talked about this on Tuesday with Key Issue, but we talked about how I think that's why they're holding off on bringing a character like, say, Poison Ivy, because if they butcher that, I mean, I think a lot of people would put DC on a cross, really.
For sure. And I think that I would, when it comes to like Marvel and DC within the movies, like I, for one, loved Birds of Prey. I thought that it was fun. And I think one of the reasons why some of those movies end up being more fun is that there are women behind the scenes, having a female director or having a female write the story. It can because a lot of times when like straight men write women, they do it from like a male gaze, right? Like they write the character as borderline pornographic because that's how they see women in the world. So I think that for me, that's one of the reasons why I didn't love a lot of things, like, but that's why I think that I really enjoyed Birds of Prey, is because it didn't feel like it was written for straight dudes who just wanted to see TNA. Like we got a lot more than just, we got a little bit of it, which is nice. However, I think that we do get to see fully fleshed out characters.
Yeah. Now, again, a lot of good question, guys. Oregon here says DC animated is killing it. I totally agree. I think that's something. And this is just what I've read. I'm not really I don't really watch a lot of TV. I'm a movies guy, but DC has always been known for their animated stuff. I agree with you. I'd love to see more female villains.
Villains, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm huge, and we've talked about it. I mean, Tuesday we touched on it. Like, I would love to see Poison Ivy. I can't believe that they only tried once with Uma Thurman in the George Clooney movie, but it's definitely something that they should do. Chubby Pop Chaser here said, when Punchline hits the big screen, everybody will go. I think that's a bit away, though, right? Like, I don't think that's coming anytime soon. I think they're going to gauge at how they can do this, and then maybe put it kind of in that solo, the Joker that just happened, like Joaquin Phoenix, things like that. I think it's going to be a bit, because they're still capitalizing on Harley Quinn.
And I think that because right now in the comics, Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy have like a relationship. And since in the movies, since we've seen Harley Quinn separate, and like, you know, that's why we had Birds of Prey, because there's a big breakup. So I think that that could be a really interesting way to get Poison Ivy into the cinematic universe. And I think that that would be a really cool way to also see a lot more female villains. Like, I'm there, 100% want to see a lot more female villains.
I agree, Oregon. I really do. I don't think that counts. I don't think the Mr. Freeze counts. I don't think the Batman counts. A whole bunch of stuff. I think that's why people don't remember it. I remember. I think I was in like grade 3, and we got these like big ass. I think they were like 3 feet tall, and and the teacher gave them to us. And later on, I found out that she got them for like free from a theater. But it was basically like the behind the scenes of that movie and everything that went into it and the props. And I remember everybody had the page of like Alicia Silverstone as like the thing. But if you remember, like those suits were even weird because they weren't all black. They had like silver on them and stuff. And I always just thought, you know what, that's so, I don't know. I don't know. That movie's just a whole different ball game.
Yeah, and I think that to me, like, if you know about, I know this is kind of like off subject, but with Avatar, James Cameron wanted to do that movie for so long, but he put off doing this story because there's so much in Avatar that couldn't be done because the technology at the time just wasn't right. So I think that that's another thing too, is that a lot of the technology that we saw in those older Batman movies, they're cheesy and corny a little bit because they didn't have as many special effects as we do now, that are more practical effects. So I think as special effects get better, like, we can really see a lot more dynamic superheroes on the screen.
So outside of like, say, Poison Ivy, right? And not just leaving it for a DC conversation, but just overall, in your opinion, like, what would be some of the like the badass girls that we could get? You know, because like
villains or like anyone.
Villains for sure. Like, I think it's a consensus where a lot of people just want to see like a badass girl, and you kind of see it because I notice it again going to my like, you know, Latin roots. I watch a lot of like, you know, cartel stuff and things like that, like Queen of the South, things like that. Like, you're seeing more shows and more production companies put like women in power and like just basically letting them be badass. So what do you think would be like a great character to capitalize on, like Marvel or DC?
So I'm going to go ahead and go with DC here. Okay. And I'm going to say Big Barda, who is Mr. Miracle's, Mr. Miracle's wife. And I think that because she's the leader of the female Furies, I think that that would be another great story, because I think that one of the reasons why Marvel has had a lot of success is that they have this strategic vision, and they see, they see Marvel has this vision of like, okay, what's this plan going to be? We're going to introduce this character, and it's going to be an intro to this character, where DC wasn't as methodical about the movies that were coming out. So I think that if DC wants to be a little bit more, if they want to cash in on that, like, they've got Wonder Woman. She's doing a great job being a female superhero, leading the box office. But I would love to see Big Barda come on screen. And I think we talked about it on Wednesday. I would really love to see, I can't remember the actress's name, but she played Cara Dune in Mandalorian. I would love to see her play Big Barda. Another one of those like baddie villains that I would love to see is Granny Goodness, who like raised Mr. Miracle and Big Barda in the pits. So I think that that would be such a cool story to see on screen.
Now, FaceTime has a good comment here, but imagine if Mystique was actually a villain in the movies. I'm pretty sure in the 90s cartoon, she was on the bad side. I mean, she helped out a few times, but I mean, she was mostly a villain. Yeah, I kind of agree.
It's funny because one of my favorite characters, and I think even Sana said this on her episode, I love Magneto. And when I think about him, people characterize him as a villain. Like, I don't see him as a villain. Like, Magneto was right. I would love to see, I hope that they do. I love seeing Fassbender, the actor who plays Magneto, because I have a huge crush on him. Right. However, I just love Magneto, and I wouldn't mind seeing him more and more in
Yeah.
Marvel movies.
And I've talked about it where I hope with the next X-Men they do, I hope they capitalize on him as well.
Yeah.
Actually, something that was really brought to my attention too when I did last week's show with Sana, she kind of brought up a good point in her Professor X and Magneto comment, where I was just kind of like blown away, where I'm like, wow, I never really looked at it like that. But she had the point of, you know, Magneto was always actually the one, you know, trying to do good, where Professor X was the one that was almost manipulating people. So it just depends on how you read it, but like she kind of made good points. Definitely check it out, or message her, but she's got a lot of good points on that subject as well. Let's see here. So I got a question first. Jay Hood, what's going on, brother? Hi guys, listen in. Yeah, man, no worries. Panda here has a question for you. What is your favorite comic book story-wise, whether it's female-led or not?
So if you were watching earlier, I would say, hello, Bueller. So my favorite story right now is Saga, published by Image. If you haven't already read it, I do have a very short review on my own YouTube channel about it. And I feel like my elevator pitch for it is star-crossed lovers in space. They're on two sides of this like huge war that's been going on. They fall in love, they have a baby, they have a child together, and they have to shoot across space, evading the people who are trying to capture them. It's wild, it's wacky. You have one of my favorite characters is Lying Cat, who is a cat who says lying whenever someone tells a lie. You've got Alana, one of the main characters, and Marco. Those are the two. Their child Hazel, and there's sex and there's drugs and there's a line of royalty that has TVs for heads, and you see them fuck, and you see T and A and D and V in this. Like, it is not a PG comic at all. Saga is just brilliant and fantastic.
Yeah, I heard somebody kind of refer to that book or that series actually as like a kind of like a Romeo and Juliet, right?
Yeah, I want to say Romeo and Juliet in space, but when I was working at the comic book store I used to work at in Florida, I said that to someone. I'm like, oh my God, it's like Romeo and Juliet in space. It's fantastic. And they're like, ew. So then after I said that, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to call it that anymore because this one person critiqued my elevator pitch for it. But man, this story is just so dynamic. It's got, right now, there's about 9 collected volumes, and it's on issue 45. There was supposed to be a 1-year hiatus. However, I think because of coronavirus and a couple of other things, it's been extended. So we're not sure when we're going to get to see Saga come back. But hopefully it's soon.
Now, fill me in, like, from the comic book standpoint, right? Like, for the collector, the one to get in that collection is that number 1. I think it's the white cover with them, right?
Yep. Right now, so
right?
I've been collecting it since it came out in 2012. However, there was like an accident that happened and they got destroyed. And about 2 years ago, I ended up paying about $300 just to get the first 5 issues. Luckily, since then, it's gone like. If I paid for it now, it would be much higher. So I'm glad that I bought it back then when I did, even though I'm like, should I spend $300 on this? Like, should I do that or not? But it was worth it. And yeah.
Now, do you have like a set like monthly income, like, you know, like on books? Like, is there a set price, or is it just like, you know, if you see something, you're buying it? It doesn't matter what week it is. You're just grabbing.
Pretty much. I mean, like I have, when you said, do you have an income? I'm like, well, I have a job.
Sure, yeah, no.
But I do have I kind
of
have a budget. Yeah. I have a little bit of a budget, and I would say typically weekly, what I'm going to spend on my new comic pickups is going to be about $50-ish, and that could be, you know, 7 or 8 single issues, and then maybe like 1 or 2 graphic novels. So that could bring it to like 40, 50. And then, oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe. During quarantine, because Diamond wasn't publishing a lot of single issues. I kind of shifted that budget into trade paperbacks, so I picked up a lot of those. So, and that could be something that's a little bit more current or something that was a little bit older. So I would say my monthly budget for comics is usually going to be about $200-300, and that could include a statue here and there.
Yeah, so that actually brings me to my next point. You not only collect the comics though, like you're into statues. Are you into like Funkos and like figures at all, or just?
A little bit. It's funny because maybe like 3 years ago, when Squirrel Girl, like she's really still popular, but Squirrel Girl got a Funko Pop and I didn't get my hands on it. And then a coworker of mine was like, "Oh yeah, I collect them. Like, you want it?" And I'm like, "Sweet." And he's like, "Cool, like $40." And I'm like, "Fuck." And so like eventually I think like, negotiated. I talked him down to about what's a budget?
Yeah, man.
But I think that was probably the most I've ever paid for a Funko Pop. But I usually try to I did put my link in the I put my link in the chat earlier, so if maybe you scroll up, you can see it from
her IG is connected. So she's got her link on her IG, which is Comics Will Break Your Heart. I'm not trying to plug myself here, but if you can't find it, just go on mine. You can find her on the followers. It'll just come up like that. So definitely check her out. She's got a channel. She also does a Thursday show, 2:30 Pacific time and 5:30 Eastern time, if my math is correct. She does it with Comic Chop Shop. They got a really good setup. Really knowledgeable people in the community, and they talk about a lot of various things. So definitely check them out for sure.
Yeah, sometimes our show gets really, because like I said, during the quarantine, we didn't really have single issues to talk about. So sometimes we would just have like random weeks where it could be, we're talking about horror comic books, or we're talking about sci-fi, or I go on a long rant about the movie The Lighthouse. So it could be, we're talking about like our single issue pickups for the week.
Another question here. Probably Portland related, because you guys are both in the same area. So
I did not pick up anything from Things from Another World. And Midtown Comics in New York also did a really big sale that I was really tempted. However, I'm trying to read 100 graphic novels this month. Because
talk about that, because that's a pretty cool thing you're doing. You're like doing I think it's like 3 to 5 books a day, I think, for the month.
Yeah. Yep. Today, like the next 2 days, I'm reading Paper Girls by the same author who did Saga. So there's 6 trade paperbacks, or graphic novel collections. So that's what I'm reading now. So thinking about, because about a month ago, I was walking, tripped and fell, and I broke my foot. So, and then Bueller, of Powell's. It's a city, it's a bookstore that's a city block wide. It's like 3 stories. They had a really good sale on some used, like all their used books were 30% off. So I was getting like 50-60% off most books, and ended up spending my entire monthly budget on just like graphic novels, trade paperbacks. So yeah. Yep. Old Lady Jen. Yep.
Yeah. 100 graphic novels. Wow.
So I'm trying to get through all of this in a month, and I've picked up like my single issues through like these past couple weeks, and like 1 or 2 graphic novels. So knowing that I was going to do 100 this month, I did not buy like pretty much anything else.
Yeah. So that kind of leads me into something. So when we were talking about like you grabbing, like you had your budget and things like that. So are you more on like newer stuff when it comes out? Are you buying back issues like the old school Silver Age? Are you into the slabs, things like that? Like where do you decide on where to buy, basically?
So my big thing is that I love reading the stories. So I don't necessarily I'm not going to spend a lot of my budget on hell yeah, let's go ahead and do it. I don't know about in quarantine right now, but 100%. So
are people still doing that though?
Yeah, right. Here in Oregon, yeah, kind of. Hope Pals reopens, Miss Walking. Yeah.
There's a lot of you Oregon people in here. Yeah.
It's a when I so I just moved here, but I visited Portland in 2018, and Powell's quickly became one of my favorite places in the world, and along with books with pictures and Floating World comics. So when I was figuring out where I wanted to move in Portland, I'm like, where's the closest proximity to Powell's? Like, I know I'm going to go there on a weekly basis. So I live a couple blocks away from Powell's, like within walking distance. So it's a really magical place, and I can't wait till they open back up.
Yeah.
But we were talking a little bit about like things that I buy. I don't necessarily buy like slabbed or like graded books. If I'm going to buy anything, I usually will just go ahead and buy raw. But what's really important to me is reading a story. So I'm not going to, like, if I buy a slab, I'm not going to crack it open just to read it. So typically when I'm buying books, I usually go ahead and just buy the stories that are coming out now, buying what I like.
Yeah, definitely. Right? Once the borders open up, for sure. So for those of you people that don't know, I am on the Canadian side. So, you know, I'd have to be a superhero to make it over. Portland is nicknamed Comic Town, USA. Kind of cool. I did not know that. So yeah.
Like I said, there's a lot of creators. Like, you know, we were talking about Ironheart and Miles Morales. Brian Michael Bendis, who created those characters, actually lives here in town. Just seriously, so many comic book creators are here. I've got the pick of so many cool comic book shops here within a 15-20 minute walk.
Yeah. No, that's pretty cool. Yeah. I remember when we were talking, you said, you know, when I told you that we only had maybe like 3, you just kind of like smirked, and I was like, okay, you know.
Yeah. But granted, you know, I understand that. And like I said earlier, when I lived in Florida, there was one comic book shop near me that ended up like closing down. And that was maybe like a 15-20 minute drive. But then the next closest one was almost an hour away, depending on the traffic. And that was the one that I ended up working at. So about an hour drive to get there, just to work there. And basically what I made for the day, I just ended up spending, and the rest that was left over went to gas. So I was basically breaking even just working there.
Now I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Now I know you said that you don't really collect slabs just because you know you love reading it and things like that. Is there like a grail comic book that you like have in mind, like one that you're like, man, I would really want to have this and just kind of put it away, kind of thing?
For sure. And I feel bad because I should probably know what specific issue it is. But like I said, The Sandman is hands down my favorite comic book.
Yeah.
And I regret not picking it up, but I would love to have like the first, even if I could just get my hand on like the first couple issues. And Death is my favorite character. And I think her first appearance is in issue 6, 7, or 8, one of those. I would love, like, if I could find that one, hands down, that would be the one that I would get.
Yeah, and I think we talked about that on Tuesday when we did our top 5 female characters. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, like I said, I have a tattoo of her. So
yeah, no, that's pretty badass. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, I sometimes get jealous with the cities and communities that do have more comic book stores or just more selection, because here you kind of do have unfortunately, they're shitty places and there's really good places. So, you kind of have to go. I think we talked about it where, we have a store here that's like kind of famous for, not having prices on anything. So I walk into the store and I say, hey, how much is that comic? And they're probably going to say, you know what? It's $20. And then you might walk in and they might say, you know what? It's 50, right? So yeah, that's something that I'm not really a fan of, especially in this community where, I've never owned a comic book store, but I would just figure, like if you're good to your customers, then, you're probably going to be in business a long time. So,
for sure.
Definitely something that I wish we had more. Jennifer, that ink is crazy fire.
Thank you. I've also, it's funny because one of my favorite sci-fi series is Dune, and I was talking with a coworker about Dune, and they were like, "Oh, have there's a movie coming out. Have you read the books?" And I'm like, I've got like a whole like half sleeve of like Dune stuff. I've got the Litany of Fear tattooed on me. So most of my ink is book or comic book.
So what is the next book that Jennifer's looking for? Like, is there a certain book?
What do you mean? Like,
is there a certain book that's coming out soon that you're on the lookout for, like in the next week or two, something like that?
Next week, there is a trade coming out of a book that I really enjoy by Image called Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Rodney Barnes is the
Yeah.
author, and that book I'm looking forward because in my transition, in my move across country, I missed a couple of the single issues. So I'm really looking forward to picking up the trade and seeing where that came out.
Do you have the first one, that variant one that I think
don't
it's
know
the
about
variant one.
I
I
don't
could
have
be
the
wrong.
variant, but I have issue 1 of Philadelphia. Yeah.
Yeah. I tried getting the variant kind of before it like kind of sparked up. I think see, I have this issue where somebody will tell me, hey, you know, grab this book, be on the lookout for this book. And I look at it and I'm like, $25. And I'm thinking, you know what, $25 for a book that maybe not, it's not my thing, right? And I kind of just like, you know, say, you know what, nah, I'm good. And then maybe like a day or two later, it's like a $50 book or $100 book.
Yeah.
Just like, I'm always like, God, like.
That's probably like the, you know, when I think about like collecting and I think about like the value that's in like my collection is that the publisher Image, I will pick up number 1. Have you been to any of the cons in Portland? No, I just moved here in November of last year. So I was really looking forward to Rose City Comic Con, but unfortunately we're not going to get that this year. So I haven't been able to. I've also been looking forward to Frankenstein's comic swap that I've heard about. Once again, didn't get a chance to go there before the pandemic hit. So I'm looking forward to that.
Unfortunately, I think I personally think, like, I know there's a lot of people, including in my area, because our Comic-Con is usually in June. They kind of pushed it back, they pushed it back to, I believe, October. I personally think there's not going to be any cons.
No.
Now, don't go putting me on a cross. I'm just saying, I think it's kind of time to, you know, just kind of worry about next year kind of thing. I don't really think there's going to be any cons.
And that, you know, it's unfortunate because one of my favorite parts about going to conventions is seeing the artists that are there. So in Artist Alley. So I think that kind of sucks because that's always been my favorite part. However, I feel like during this quarantine, I've been trying to support more of them online, like buying art from them in prints. So what movie are you looking forward to coming out that has been announced or is coming out soon, or maybe something you wish would be made into a movie or show? Okay, so I am really looking forward to, like, I really wanted to see Black Widow, so I'm really sad that that has been pushed back. However,
pushed back to.
I have no clue when.
I think there's a date, but I think that's also going to be pushed back.
I think I heard September or October, like later in the year, but I don't know if that's going to happen. However, speaking of Dune, I have been looking forward to this movie since like every little morsel of it coming out. I've been looking forward to it, and it's supposed to come out at the end of this year in November. My birthday is in November, so I'm like, sweet, I'm going to go and see it like 100 times in theater. And someone who knows that I love it was like, do you think it's going to come out? And I'm like, please don't fuck with Dune. Yeah. Like, I've got it. So that's the one that I'm really excited to see. I'm also, I'm really excited to see more about the Eternals. I really want to see what that's going to look like.
Yeah. I've always been a big believer in Eternals is going to be the next Guardians of the Galaxy. I've been very vocal about that. Kind of just a mirror image. Just kind of how I think Nova will be kind of the Iron Man moving forward and things like that. There's a few. So Oregon here says Frankenstein swap is good. Bueller says, yeah, he agrees.
I love going into those because you end up getting a lot of single issues. Newbie Comics and Jennifer, you need to come check out. C2E2 has been on my list for a very long time. And one of the reasons why is because I love like indie creators and I love visiting Artist Alley. And I know C2E2 has a very curated selection. Like sometimes when you go to big comic conventions, you get basically, if you can pay the $200-300, you get a booth. But there it's a little bit more curated where they have a selection process. So you see more quality there. You know, I'm kind of torn about releasing things outside of theater because there were a couple movies that were released that just went straight to on-demand or streaming. And then theaters like AMC theaters were like, oh, you're going to go ahead and release that movie without giving us a cut? Okay, cool. None of your movies are going to be shown in our theaters ever again. So I think that that's maybe why some of them are hesitant to just go straight to streaming, is because they don't want to lose the connection that they have with the theaters.
Yeah.
Hopefully once everything opens up.
And I also think too, like, I think it's different if they release it. I know a lot, having conversations with my buddies and things like that, and some people in the community here, where it's like, you know, like what are the options, right? Like, do they release it on Disney Plus? Do they release it and then kind of just waste all, you know, the money and things like that? I think they're gonna hold off on it because so much is riding on, like, you know, matching. So like everyone's saying, you know, like, you have to watch the shows because it's going to connect to this and that. So I think we're going to see them just kind of hold off. I also don't like the idea, and I can't speak for the US, but I know in Canada they're talking about, yes, opening the theaters, but, you know, almost every 2 seats. So realistically, like, what are you going to do, right? Like, I think a theater seats, I think, like 50 to 80 people. So what are you going to do? Have like 20 people there? You know, like.
I think also what may happen too, because like, I think Canada has done a much better job than the US flattening the curve of everything that's going on. So right now we're seeing another huge spike.
Yeah.
But
we're staying home. That's why our beaches aren't open.
Yeah. But I think that one thing, 2 or 3 things that need to happen for the theaters is that, one, I think that fewer movies are going to need to be in theaters, right? So instead of showing 10 movies, you may need to show 5, and then you can have the same amount of showings within a certain period. And then I obviously, I think it can't even be spaced 2 or 3 between. I think it'll need to be 4 or 5 between, and then we're going to skip 2 rows. So it's going to be a ton of space. And once again, masks required. They're going to have to do a much better sweep up. So I think there's going to be a lot of things that need to happen to have theaters open. Well, Dune has to be one of the most. Dune is one of like the best sci-fi series. Like, I've got my Litany Against Fear, got my Chris Knife and my Bene Gesserit lady with me.
Now, here's the problem, FaceTime, and I think, I don't know if we've discussed it. I know I've discussed it vocally and things like that. The only problem here is I've watched a lot of the shows and things like that. So like Runaways, Legion, they came out being terrible, in my opinion, right? Like, you know, I pay my taxes. I'm able to have an opinion. So that's my opinion. So I'm kind of just hesitant on if that's going to look good. I know when I saw the trailer, I was like, oh, wow, you know, it's got like a very horror feel to it, and like I thought it was like pretty cool, things like that. If I'm not mistaken, I mean, I think it's like a rated R.
I believe so.
Yeah. So, I mean, it could be something that that's really cool. However, I'm not going to get my hopes up with anything X-Men related or anything like that, just because of you know, like Runaways, Legion, things like that. I'd rather go into it like disappointed. And then go in to see it, and then it's like, hey, you know what? This was amazing. I'd rather that happen.
See, I was particularly blown away by Legion. Like, I thought that movie, like 100%, that show killed for me. Aubrey Plaza, like I absolutely adore her. However, I have given up hope even thinking that I'll see a New Mutants movie because it was announced so long ago.
We've got Mr. Hollywood himself, everybody, Mr. Burke family.
Hello. So I've kind of given up on seeing New Mutants, and I think that once we do get to see it, I'm going to be my expectations are going to be so low, so I'll be blown away.
Yeah.
Dune Run 1 through the
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, especially, you know, I mean, they got the Cable thing, they got the Deadpool thing out, so like, I don't know what, you know, I like I said, I'd rather go into it just being like very like not expecting anything, and then leaving the theater being like, you know what, that was awesome, because and I know it's not Marvel, but like that happened with Suicide Squad when it came out. I was like, oh my god, this is going to be like DC's turning point. They got Harley Quinn, you know, they got Will Smith, they got all this, and then I left the theater being like, you know, how do I get a refund? Like, do I say I was in the washroom and I got locked out? Like, that's what I was, you know, kind of.
Was that a reference to IT Crowd?
No, that was
okay.
Whatever. But Yeah. So, I don't know. I hope it's good. I hope everything is good. But like I said, a lot of the shows and movies are going to be pushed back. I want to touch on something that Lasso said about, visiting Chicago. I think the one thing that has happened throughout this pandemic is a lot of us have been able to connect, and thankfully for like, say, things like Zoom and StreamYard, we've been able to like, talk comics and just, talk basically worldwide, nationwide, and things like that. So I don't think it's crazy to basically think it's crazy that none of us will see each other in the future, because I feel like a lot of people are building their relationships that now we have reasons to go to, like, say, certain cons and festivals and expos and things like that. So
For sure.
like if I got to go to Chicago, if I got to go to Portland, like I wouldn't mind going now, knowing that there's people I can relate to and things like that. So if there's one silver lining in the comic industry, in the comic community with this COVID, I think that's it.
For sure. And I think too that like building these relationships, and like you and I were even talking about like the channels and like the stuff that we're coming out with. I've been thinking about doing it for so long, but it wasn't until there was this pandemic and people were stuck at home that I'm like, okay, like it's time to do it.
Yeah.
So, I'm one of the people who I'll call my YouTube channel like coronavirus quarantine baby, because that's when mine got started,
Yeah. And what got, like, so that was the starting point, right? Because like you've always been passionate about comics.
Oh, for sure. And I would probably say that so I have been like specifically like doing reviews on Instagram, and I'm not really like into Twitter, but I've been into comic books for a really long time. I was doing like Instagram reviews a little bit and had been talking about doing videos for so long. And then my co-host Dan on Comic Chop News, he had his own channel, and he and I started talking about Dune, and he wanted to like do this review of Dune, and I'm like, hell yeah, I'm in. And that was the first time that I had really been serious about doing it. And I have to shout him out, because if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't have started my own channel. So I'm really thankful and glad for him. I feel like Jennifer on New Mutants. I'm just afraid of getting attached to something that more likely have any legs. Yeah, 100%. Like I know we're not going to see a New Mutants 2 or 3. Like we're not going to see a trilogy or anything like that. I think the beauty of it though is that it gets to be what it is, right? Like there's not going to be an expectation to have a sequel, and I'm so excited to see Ilyana. Magic is one of my favorite characters, and I just want to, even if I get to see her once on the screen, I'll be happy about it. However, even the way that the last like other X-Men movies, like with Dark Phoenix and all of that, we can just kind of like wash our hands of it and let's see what else we can do. Yeah, let's see what else we can do and let's make it better. Yeah. Right.
I think especially with that with your comment about New Mutants, I too don't think we're going to see a 2 and 3, and here's why. They're going cosmic. They're going to have some cosmic stuff and some stuff on Earth. They have to figure out a way to finish Thor, right? Not finish like as in die, but like they got to figure out what's going to happen with him. Then Silver Surfer and Galactus and all that's going to come in. Then you have the Nova thing. Okay. Then they've already said that they're bringing Fantastic Four and X-Men in. They're not going to bring them all in one movie or in 2 years. Like you guys got to remember, the phase that we just ended. It was a 10 to 12 year run. It's going to take a while. So when you start looking into that, I think those smaller projects is probably not top of their list. I think they're going to gauge at how popular it could come and how they could kind of fix everything. But like, it's a different time too. Like Miles Morales is hot, Spider-Gwen is hot, things like that. If Carnage hits, like, are they going to bring them over? There's just so much they could do that. For a New Mutants to hit and actually do something and then be successful, I think it's going to be a few years. So
yeah, I think that if anyone is interested in any of these movies. 100% female Jane Foster. I'm super excited, and I have some theories on. Maybe it's less theories, but really what I hope. I know I talked about it on our last chat, but I really want to see Angela on the big screen, and I think that Jane Foster, Thor, and like that'll be a good way to get because there's some crossovers with like Guardians of the Galaxy and
Yep.
X-Men. So I
Yep.
was just about to say, I think that if anyone is looking towards maybe investing in some comics, any of the Guardians of the Galaxy X-Men crossover, I think that will hit the screen, as well as any of the any of the like Fantastic Four stuff done by Jonathan Hickman, who's currently who's been responsible for a lot of the new X-Men stuff with the House of X, Powers of X series that recently came out. I would say those are hot books anyways, like the House of X, Powers of X, like even the second, third, fourth printing of a lot of those are so hot. If you can get your hands on them now, I think those will be, those are just going to go up in value. And then I hope that we do see this House of X, Powers of X on the big screen.
Pickle Joe says, do you think we'll see a Thunderbolts movie? You know what? I don't know. With everything going on, I don't know. I'm a big believer, and Evan actually mentioned it. So I think Secret Wars is the next big thing.
Yeah.
I think we all got excited for Civil War. You guys know how I feel about Civil War. I think it's just after how they did that movie, I know I was skeptical of how they brought all those characters in. I was like, how are they going to do that? And they did it really, really well. So I think it's something that they could do. But again, guys, I mean, they got X-Men. We got to figure out what's going on with Spider-Man, things like that.
I think too, like Marvel saw a lot of big success bringing Guardians of the Galaxy in, right? And those were some obscure characters. So I think that like they did really well bringing these like monolithic characters like Captain America and Iron Man on the big screen. But I think because they had such success with like the minor characters like Guardians, hopefully we'll see some more like minor characters that not a lot of people know about.
Yeah.
So what's your full YouTube name? I can't find you just typing what I see. It is, so my Instagram is Comic Books Will Break Your Heart. My YouTube is Comics Will Break Your Heart.
And if you go onto her Instagram, you click her link, it'll bring you up to it, and then you can just subscribe there.
Yeah.
It's actually my fault. I forgot to plug her stuff into the description, but
no worries.
Definitely check her out. I don't think you were here earlier, but she has her own show on Thursday that she co-hosts with Comic Shop, 2:30 p.m. Pacific and 5:30 Eastern time. She's a really cool chick, knows a lot about comics. She's very knowledgeable. All those books behind her are books that she's read. That is not a green screen by any means.
No, not at all.
Her Instagram, there's a picture of her sitting on like a few boxes. Those are all hers. That's like, not Photoshopped.
Yeah. So I think the total that I ended up having is like the boxes that Diamond ships to like stuff to comic book stores. Like I ended up with like 20 to 30 of like those small books, and some of those are like books. I think one of them is like mugs that I had for my kitchen, and then it was about 20 a mix of about like 20 short and long boxes that I had.
Hey, what's going on, Matt?
Hello.
Yeah, she's got a lot. She has got a lot. And
Thank you.
Some pretty impressive books. She's got some statues, things like that. So
I'll give it like a little bit of a sneak peek of the statues. They're so messed up because these are the cheapest shelves that I could find, and I literally have like I have a no, I got them from like Big Lots. So like super cheap, but I'm looking at upgrading. So hopefully this will change behind me. So they're not unpacked or anything. So I'm going to give you like a 15-second little so you can see I've got some statues up here.
Jeez.
That are all in box, and they're just kind of like on top of each other.
I see no Iron Man anywhere, so that might have to change.
I don't have Iron Man, however, Iron Heart's up there.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got an Iron Heart. I've got an Iron Heart. No worries.
You get a pass. So I know this show is all about Jennifer, but I just got some breaking news. Burke family has lost 7 subs in 15 minutes. So if you haven't subbed already, sub to me. I have a giveaway going on. Sub to Jennifer because this is all about her. But however, go and sub my friend Burke. Let's keep him at 1,000. And Panda here, yes. Everyone go sub each other up. You know that's what it's all about. Building connections, supporting the community, things like that. Guys, we're not going to become millionaires off our channels, but building the connections, talking about comics and things like that. That's what it's about, right? So Matt Woods here says, Jennifer, that is a great looking setup. Lots of books.
Thank you. Yeah. So like literally this space right here, like I said, I have a 400 square foot apartment and this takes up like a lot of it. I've got another wall like behind my bed that just has some like a whole bunch of paintings and stuff. But I'm looking at getting a better bookshelf so then I can put my statues up. I've also got my cat here who wanted to join. So one of the two cats.
Co-host.
Yeah.
Co-host. Well, that's awesome. So you know what? I've had a really good time.
Same. Lots of good questions from the chat. I really appreciate all the questions from the chat.
Really is there anything you want to add? Is there anything that we haven't really touched on that you want to kind of get out there? Or
I mean, not really. Like I could literally go on and on and on about all this stuff. I know that we talked briefly about some of the like not fun news in the comic book industry, a lot of allegations about sexual assault and things like that. There's a lot to unpack there, so I'm pretty sure no one wants to get bogged down like that. Awesome meeting you too. Come follow me and we'll talk comics and stuff like that.
Yeah, guys, she's very friendly. She'll talk comics.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I've always got recommendations.
I don't know. I'm trying to figure out something here. I don't know how to give wrenches yet. So yeah, Panda Perk, I'm so sorry. You guys know, I'm a newbie when it comes to this tech stuff. So yeah, so with that, guys, I think we're gonna wrap it up. So don't forget to check out Jennifer on her Instagram account. Let's get her numbers up, chat with her. She's very friendly. Don't forget her show. What's the show that you do with like, I think there's like 4 of you, right?
Yeah, so on the Comic Chop like YouTube channel, that one every Thursday we do like our weekly picks and like some random topic, and then once a month we do a graphic novel book club where we go ahead and we just read one graphic novel and then we talk about it. So we've done Nail Biters, Scott Pilgrim. We Can Never Go Home. So this upcoming month, we're actually going to do Black Science, which is published by Image. So we'll be reading that and then we'll be chatting about it live.
What time is that? What time is that?
That one's usually just kind of random because sometimes everyone can make it, sometimes not. So it's usually depending on our schedules. So if you go and follow Comic Chop News on YouTube, you can find that too. And that's where we do our weekly show as well.
And guys, if you guys are following her, she always posts when she's going up. She puts it in her story. She puts it in her, posted stuff. So you're never going to miss it. Like I said, she's very, very knowledgeable. She'll talk comics for you all day.
And right now,
where we were meeting for a few minutes and it turned into like an hour and a half. So
I felt kind of bad because like with the time you were like, oh yeah, like 7 o'clock your time, and that ended up being like almost till midnight your time. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I'm literally like, awesome. This month I'm trying to get through like 100 graphic novels. Yeah. So like I'm even like I'll talk about the stuff that I'm reading. If anyone didn't catch it earlier, I'm plowing through Paper Girls right now, so I'm reading first.
So 100 graphic novels in a month. That's her challenge. She's doing 3 to 5 every day.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Joe, for that. Yeah, definitely something up, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah. So with that, we're gonna be heading off. Plug you. If you haven't caught it or catched it, oh my God, English just disappeared there. Jennifer was on my Comic Talk on Tuesday. We talked about the top 5 females. So if you haven't checked it out, definitely check it out. She makes a lot of good points, comes up with a lot of characters. So it's things like that. She's going to be frequently, popping up here and there on my show because I really enjoy you chatting.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. And guys, if you haven't already, subscribed to me as well. Check my Instagram. I have a giveaway. I'm giving away 2 books. I kind of started it late, so I'm trying to reach 750 subscribers, and I will be giving away 2 books. X-Men Annual 14, which is the cameo of Gambit, and X-Men 282. So once we get to 750, I'll be giving those books away. And yeah, guys, thanks for joining. These are usually always, I always say, I try to aim for like 30, 40 minutes, and then it turns out to be an hour and a half. And that's basically because of the community and the good conversations that we have. So thank you guys for joining. I always support anyone who supports me. So thanks for joining. And yeah, guys, this was all about Jennifer. So sub her up, add her on Instagram, and just chat with her. She's a friendly face. So definitely check her out. So guys,
thank you so much
for joining. Yeah, thank you for coming on. I really liked our chats. So guys, check her out. Okay, thanks for joining.